Okay, today's lesson we're going to talk about a brand new political party, and that's going to be the Republican Party. Republican Party. Some of you might have heard the term GOP, which is the Grand Old Party. It's the same thing. Oftentimes on the news, you might hear a GOP candidate. When you hear that term, that means the Republican Party. Now, the Republican Party gets its start in 1854. It's going to actually be founded up in Wisconsin. Its goals is going to be to keep slavery from spreading. And you've seen in my last videos, the last two especially, the Compromise of 1850 and the Kansas-Nebraska Act, that they're doing everything to try to hold this country together. And as you know, as Thomas Jefferson said, we got the wolf by the ears, and we can either hold on or let it go. Well, here's another party that's emerging. We've talked about the Free Soil Party. We talked about the Whigs. We talked about the Democrats. Well, the new party is called the Republican Party. Okay, so who forms this Republican Party? Well, it's going to be a group of Free Soilers, remember the Free Soil Party, Northern Democrats, and anti-slavery Whigs. Now, very few of these people that joined the new Republican Party are abolitionists, okay? Really, what they are, and let me jump down to the bottom, they want to keep slavery from spreading, keep slavery out of the Western territories, all right? They believed that if slavery is not allowed to expand, that eventually slavery is going to die out in the South as well. Okay, so why do they need a new political party? They have the Whigs, they have the Democrats. Well, they believe that neither the Whigs nor the Democrats would take a strong enough stand. Especially, a lot of these Democrats, are opposed to slavery, are opposed to the expansion of slavery, but they don't dare come out and say it because they know if they do, they will lose all political support from the South. So even though you're going to see a lot of Northern Democrats will say privately that, yeah, we need to keep slavery from spreading or that slavery is wrong, they won't come out and take a strong stand because they don't want to lose political support from the South. Therefore, they form a new party, and that's Republicans. Again, that's the Free Soilers, Northern Democrats, and anti-slavery Whigs. Okay, this new political party grows actually pretty quickly. It really catches fire. So in the election of 1856, they're kind of ready to challenge, for presidency. And they elect John C. Fremont. Do you remember John C. Fremont? He has been one of the heroes of the Mexican War. He had, pushed the Mexican forces out of California. By the way, Fremont, Nebraska is named after him. He runs for president. He is, pretty popular, but he has very little political experience. His only stance is, hey, I'm anti-slavery. Okay, so little political experience. Okay, his main opponent in the election of 1856 is the Democrat, John Buchanan. He's a northern guy, but a lot of people see him as a guy who has southern sentiments, all right? So the South accepts him. He's an acceptable northerner because they don't fear him. He's not going to try to interfere with their way of life. And then the other guy is Millard Fillmore from the Know Nothing Party. Remember those guys, the nativists who want to keep America for only native-born white men? Well, those are the three candidates. Well, in the election of 1856, James Buchanan wins, mostly because of the support of the South. But Republicans make a good showing. They make a strong showing. They're kind of posed properly for the election of 1860. Okay, so between 1856 and 1860, you have the midterm elections. The midterm elections happen, every 2 years between presidential election cycles, all right? So now a new Republican leader kind of steps to the stage. And now nobody really knows this guy outside his home area, and that's Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln. He actually was born in Kentucky, very poor. His mother had passed away. He's raised by his father and his stepmother, who he adores, by the way. He later the family moves to Indiana, and then finally to Illinois. Once he's in Illinois, he opens up a store, not real successful. He goes and studies law. He's a very smart guy. He really is. very humble backgrounds, though. And he enters politics. Okay? So he serves for 8 years in the state legislature, and then finally he's elected to one term in Congress. All right. But remember, Stephen Douglas, who is from Illinois as well, proposed the Kansas-Nebraska Act. You remember the Kansas-Nebraska Act? And real quickly, they're going to take the land that's part of the Louisiana Purchase and divide it into two territories, the Kansas and Nebraska. And Douglas proposes that the people in these two territories decide if it's going to be slave or if it's going to be free. All right? Lincoln is absolutely opposed to the Kansas-Nebraska Act because he says, this is wrong. This is wrong. This has already been decided. Remember the Missouri Compromise. We should not let people decide. Slavery is wrong, and we need to come out and say that. We should not let people decide for slavery. That'd be like, hey, let's vote for murder. Who wants to murder people, right? So he is so opposed to the Kansas-Nebraska Act, he runs for Senate in 1858 against Stephen Douglas. Okay. Now, during this campaign, they have a series of debates, and Lincoln and Stephen Douglas, debate 7 times. Now, most people in the United States really look at Stephen Douglas as the front runner, as the next president of the United States. They really believe this is the guy. This Lincoln character nobody knows about. But in these debates, Lincoln really begins to shine. All right. Lincoln doesn't pull punches. Lincoln flat out says slavery is wrong. African Americans are entitled to all the natural rights that are in the Declaration. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. He says that applies to the slaves too. So slavery should not be extended in the territories. Slavery should not be allowed to expand. But Lincoln does say this. However, since there is no federal law, there is no constitutional amendment banning slavery, he says that slavery can remain in states where it already exists. Okay? So he's not an abolitionist. He's really not. He's really a free soiler. He wants to keep the territories free of slavery. All right. Stephen Douglas. Okay, Stephen Douglas, what do you say about slavery? I think that the people should decide. Mere popular sovereignty. He does not want to come out and make a stand. Right? Now, you got to know, slavery's wrong. You got to stand up and say it. But he will not, because he's afraid if he does, he's going to lose support from the South. So he just kind of kicks the can to the people. You people decide. All right? Now, Douglas does narrowly win this election. But now Lincoln is becoming a national figure. Now everybody knows who Abraham Lincoln is, and everybody knows what he stands for. Okay, now it's 1859. All right, let's talk about our good friend John Brown again, okay? This guy's probably a little insane, okay? 1859, John Brown, if you remember, he's the abolitionist. He is a guy that has actually used violence and murder to kill pro-slavery people in Kansas. He believes that he is a messenger of God. He believes he is an instrument of God to end slavery. So in 1859, John Brown decides, you know what I need to do? I need to lead a slave uprising. And that's what I'm going to do. So he leads his followers, his sons, and 5 African Americans. I think there's only like 12 or 14 guys, I believe, with him on this whole raid, to Harpers Ferry, Virginia. And in Harpers Ferry, Virginia, it's right on the Virginia-Maryland border, is the big federal arsenal. And an arsenal, again, I hate this term, but they call it a gun warehouse. And that's basically what it is. That's a place to store arms and ammunitions. Okay, so what John Brown is trying to do, he is going to raid the federal arsenal at Harpers Ferry and gather all the guns. He hopes that when slaves hear about this raid, they're going to rush to him, rush to Father John, and he's going to give you guns. And we are going to go on this big campaign, and he's going to go out through the South, through the slave territories, leading the slave army against their masters. All right? So initially, it looks promising. Brown is able to take the arsenal over. I think they only have one night watchman. He's able to capture the arsenal. He takes kind of the fire station area. He hopes to inspire the slaves to uprise. But guess what? Slaves don't come. Why? Well, remember, this is right on the Virginia-Maryland border. And of all places to pick, he picks the one area where most of the free African Americans live. They're not slaves for the most part. And they're like, no, we're not coming. All right? So nobody comes. Nobody, he was waiting for this uprising that never occurs. Well, someone does show up, and that's going to be the United States Marine Corps, led by an Army colonel, lieutenant colonel, I think his rank was at the time, Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee. So his troops kill 10 of the raiders, and they capture John Brown. All right, pretty easy. Uprising is a disaster, right? Seems like it should be the end of the story, but it's not. He is tried for murder and for treason. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, so John Brown gives this kind of moving defense of his actions. He doesn't try to, please forgive me. Oh, I'm so sorry. No. He basically says, slavery's wrong. We need to end this, and if the government won't, then people like me will. Gives very moving defense, but in the long run, he is found guilty and he is hanged. All right? To many Northerners, though, John Brown becomes a martyr because he's willing to give up his life for his beliefs. And I'll tell you what, guys, they make him almost like a Christ figure, that he died for these poor slaves, that he gave his life for them. They write songs and poems and church services, and oh my gosh, it's just this outpouring of grief in the North for John Brown. Frederick Douglass even goes on to say that he had more courage than even Frederick Douglass, because Frederick Douglass can talk, but John Brown, acts. Right? Now, to the white Southerners, they're like, "Are you kidding me? You're kidding me, right? You guys are writing songs and poems about this guy who's hacked people to death, who's tried to overthrow the government," they say. The white Southerners are outraged at the Northern response. They say this guy is a criminal, he's a lunatic, he's a murderer. And many of these white Southerners are now convinced that the North wants to destroy slavery. And with destroying slavery, that means destroying the South along with it. So now the stage is set. All right? 1859. 1860 is coming up. We have a new election. And let's see what's going to happen.